What happens when a heating expert becomes a client on his own extension project? Hear David's story, the challenges he faced, the lessons he learned, and how this has impacted on his business and his family life. Don't miss this honest look at what it really takes to build to last. Subscribe today and start building spaces that truly last. Okay, David, so as someone who has recently had an extension and gone through the home improvement cycle, can you explain to us what made you decide to have an extension and what were you hoping to gain from it?
So we knew when we were buying the house that we bought that it wasn't really fit for purpose long term, but there was nothing out there that we could find. We wanted a new build, but we couldn't really find what we liked at new build stage, if you like. So we wanted a big open kitchen, and I know some builders now were doing that, but kind of 5 years ago we just had a lot of difficulty finding the look that we wanted. So we decided to buy a new build, but quite quickly after buying it, we wanted to start smashing it about and take a wall out at the back and open it up and have a family area. So it was always the idea to do it. But I suppose we oversimplified it a little bit. Like, we're going to buy a house and we're going to have an extension without really knowing who was going to do it until we found yourself, obviously.
Okay, so that's quite interesting, that is, buying a new build to extend it straight away. Because when I first saw the house, when I first met you, I was like, why are you extending a house like that, newly built or modernised inside? And that's what you decide to do. So that's quite interesting, because you couldn't find that off the market anywhere with that layout. Yeah,
I know with a lot of new build sites, whether it's Taylor Wimpey, Barrett's, Redrow, you can select a lot of options like interior finishing touches, but you can't really dictate how you want the space to look. So we kind of gave up. It was either buying an older property that had already been renovated and how we wanted it, or basically buy the foundations of the home we wanted, a big enough space, a garage. It was it's a detached property we were in. So there was a lot of boxes ticked. But in terms of the kitchen and the living room area, we wanted the open plan, we wanted an island, we wanted a bifold door looking out into the garden so we could open up the bifolds in the summer and introduce the garden as an extra room, really, which we've ultimately done. But finding that didn't seem, I'm sure, there may be some smaller housing companies out there that do it, but we couldn't find what we wanted. So we had to kind of create it, or with your help and your team's help, create the home of our dreams, if you like.
It's quite interesting. That's what home builders get criticised for, the copy and paste house build. And really, it's not fit for modern living.
No.
A lot of families want what you've created there. They want the open plan kitchen, diner across the back of the property where the family space can be. It's gone away from having a separate dining room. Some people still want the separate dining rooms, but not more so. They want the family space, which is interesting. But there are some house builders out there taking that on board now. I've seen some designs coming on board, but you certainly, some of the people you mentioned there do seem to still put the dining room on the back. Yeah. So I met you after the design stage. So I met you when you already had plans. So can you tell us how you went about that? Where did you source the architect from, and how did that process go for you?
So the builder that we initially spoke to, so we were looking for houses, and we found one in Womburn that had it was similar to how we wanted. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't exactly how we liked it, but it was somewhere close. But that went on the market. It was probably at the higher end of our budget. And it sold immediately. We weren't in with a sniff. I think a cash buyer bought it ultimately. So we, weren't in that position. But I said to the seller, look, I really kind of hope you don't mind me asking, but we really like your extension. Would you recommend the builders that did it for you? Mm-hmm. And they said that they would, and they put us in touch with them. Unfortunately, although those guys came recommended, it was a nightmare trying to get them round to ours to have a look at the project. So he recommended their architect, which was why we had the plans. You know, we didn't have a builder as such, but we got the plans. We knew what we wanted. It had been designed how we liked, in the style that we liked. You know, working with yourself, that was refined a little bit, but we kind of had the plan. And the builder just constantly promised to turn up and come round. And, you know, we had chats on the phone, and he seemed very keen, and it was like, yeah, this is what we do. And similar to yourself, he said, look, we project manage this job. You know, we don't really like trades or customers saying we can do this ourselves, or we'll get this guy in or that guy in, which to be honest suited me, as you found with us. You know, there's elements of the job when it comes to plumbing and heating that, you know, we could do with yourself, but they wanted to ensure that the project flowed and that everything was done at the right times, materials were ordered, and that was kind of music to my ears. But he never actually came around to have a look at the project. So we kind of had to give up on him in the end. We got a recommendation for somebody else, and that builder said, yeah, we'll do the shell. This will be the rough cost, but we don't do the foundations. The foundations were called vibro-piled, which means more to you than it does to me, even now still. But he was like, yeah, you'd have to get somebody else in to do the foundations, and then we could do the build, which again wasn't appealing to me. It was like, no, we kind of want to get somebody that's going to manage every element of it. And then I met you, and I explained that and those kind of encounters. And I think I remember you saying something along the lines of, you know, that builders like that and companies like that make your life a lot easier in some respects, because it's not the way you operate. You know, you give a solution. You know, you live up to your promises. If you say you're going to do something, you do it. You know, if you arranged for you to go around and do a site visit, you go there and you do it, and you get a quote over, and you run through all of the elements. And yeah, I don't think that story that I've just told about our experience as to the path to find your company, I don't think that's particularly unique. I think quite a bit of that goes on out there.
Yeah. You've had two completely different people there, haven't you? So you've had one who wants to project manage, but obviously for some reason has just gone a bit AWOL, or the communications let him down. And then someone who just wants to do parts of it. Yeah. And this is what I am finding out there, is that there are people who prefer certain things. So there may be a bricklayer, for instance, who likes to build the shell but doesn't want to do the foundations. Yes. Now your foundations were not too untypical, really. So I'm quite surprised that they didn't want to do that, in that it just needed an engineered raft, basically. It's got, and so it just needed a bit of engineering. But some people, so for instance, if it's your extension builder who's a bricklayer by trade, they probably wouldn't have that knowledge or the engineer to help them, or they've not got the experience in doing that. So you've had a separate thing. So I'm not here really to talk about my company as such. It's more to get your experience of it. So you was after something which isn't unique, especially with a busy professional like yourself who runs your own company. Yes. Do you want someone to take ownership of all that and get that done to a standard and make sure that's absolutely right, somebody, you know, with good communication, professional, and offering the solutions. I don't think if a company are going to take on a project of an extension, I don't think expecting them to do the foundations is outside of that scope. I mean, again, not an expert, but our perception or our hope was that all of the elements of the build could be incorporated, and it could be run as a project. We've got 2 kids at home, and we didn't want to be without the living room and the kitchen for an extended period of time. We didn't want the project. We understand that at times there's elements of the project where you have to wait, and you have to, you know, you can't get to a certain stage until, you know, concrete's set, roof's on, windows are in. We appreciate that it's not going to happen overnight, but we wanted to minimise the downtime. And for the project, we planned for my wife and our kids not to be there, and I was going to live there, and that's how we kind of managed it. But we were creating a family home, but we didn't want to break up our family long term to achieve it. Yeah. So a company that was offering that professional solution that you could communicate well with, that you could ask questions, that came out when they said they were going to come out and looked at things, you know, and you know, did their due diligence in making sure that it was everything that we wanted as well. It's quite interesting actually, because a lot of people are put off by winter builds, and you was built through the winter, weren't you? And had some quite challenging weather. So how did you find going through the winter season with the build?
Well, again, the way it was managed, all the external work and the groundwork and the raft, that was done prior to Christmas. So there wasn't too much upheaval. Like when the project began, the first month or so, there wasn't really anything. Obviously, the garden was out of bounds, but that time of year we weren't using it anyway. And then after the Christmas break, it was the internal stuff. So that was a slightly challenging time, but nothing outside of what I was expecting, because we'd made provisions that I was going to be there. And there was some particularly cold and windy weather the one night, and there was no, the house at the back, it was secure, but it was a temporary, boarding, which was quite noisy in the wind and stuff. And there were a few moments of, oh God, what are we doing? But we knew the end was always in sight. It was never there was never major uncertainty. We're going to be living like this for the next 6 months, year. We knew what was involved because of the good communication, because of the relationship we'd formed, I suppose. And working in people's homes for the last 20 years, I appreciate the stress when people are having work done, particularly when it's building work and walls coming down. And I've seen it and I've experienced it, and there's a lot of customer stories around it. I wasn't expecting none at all, but it was less stressful than I anticipated. That's the best way I could put it, really. I thought it was going to be a lot more challenging and harder. And again, being a heating engineer, my busiest time. And even the thought of me kind of leaving home in the morning to go to work, and there's a team of builders and specialists in the house with myself, my wife, not there, would be something that, I don't know if I fancy that. But we were put at ease from the start, and we just knew at every stage what was going on. Any big stress was alleviated pretty quickly.
Yeah. So we found each other by chance. Yeah. So quite a chance lucky meeting at a networking event. We won't mention the one, but through a mutual friend. If someone was going through that process again, you won't have to, because you know somebody now. But if someone's looking for someone, is there anything else you'd do differently? So, where was you going to go from there? So, like, if we hadn't met, what was your next phases, and what do you think someone should do now?
Well, unbelievably, to be honest, given the experience we'd had with the two builders, one which was a recommendation, although not a friend or family, somebody that we'd seen the example of their work. Yeah. And then the second one, again, a recommendation. But I think you need to go off more than a recommendation. I think you've got to really, in this day and age as well, there's so much access to reviews and, evidence of really looking to any other builder. I should have gone and looked at examples of their work, or, if that was a possibility, if they didn't have any reviews. I'm not saying all companies have been going for 20 years, 30 years. There's some very good trades out there that might not have a presence on social media. But I think if companies do, that makes life a lot easier, because you start to see the testimonials, the video reviews, the extensive Google reviews across multiple platforms as well. There's a lot of platforms out there. Well, names, there's a number, but it's pretty easy, for a reputable professional company to start accumulating reviews and then being able to share that with a customer base. So I'd definitely recommend that people did that. There's a few red flags that I perhaps should have looked out for. The fact that, the initial company kept breaking their promises as to when they were going to come out and just have a look. That should have been, to me, a sign, okay, maybe this isn't the right fit for us. And there could be a number of reasons why their promises were broken and why those appointments weren't met. But it was a significant amount of money, and it was a big project. And Yeah, we actually thought we might have to move. You know, we bought this house with the purpose of having this extension, and we thought, well, if we're not going to be able to get it, or we're not going to find a builder that wants to do it, or the one that we're happy with, then are we going to have to go to the drawing board and sell up and buy something a little bit, which is crazy, really, isn't it? But that was something that went through our minds. You know, maybe we're not going to get this house how we want it, so we'll start again.
Well, it goes to show, because that was surprising to me, because obviously someone in the trade itself, or who's got a trade, plumbing and heating trade, that you've not been, that there's not, if anybody should have those connections, I'd guess you would have had, but it just shows how difficult it is out there. But I think you're right about the online presence, in that I say to people, if there's no online presence, there's nothing to lose, really.
Yeah.
So if there's not the online presence, not the branded vans, they've not done a lot of work around that, it's easy for these builders to create a company, or any trade, create a company and then just leave it. Yeah. Do a bad job, move on. And you hear these stories of people, limited companies, getting rid of them, starting up a new one. But if you've spent so much time and effort gaining the reviews, like I know your business has, you're not just going to throw that away overnight, are you? With that reputation, the brand reputation you've built. Yeah, it's something you would pay money to protect.
Exactly.
So you've got that bit of financial backing to make sure every project is a good one.
It shows how much you care, and when there's multiple testimonials and multiple stories, it's not just one that's copy and paste and, have a look at this. There's multiple different scenarios and projects and different types of job. And personally, our reviews is one of the things I'm most proud of. But a lot of them, if they weren't happy with the quality of the work, they wouldn't leave a positive review. But what's nice is the comments about us as individuals and people that are working in their home, that they trust us and, we give them advice and they recommended us to friends and family. So that's really nice. So I certainly would be looking for companies like that. I did have contacts and people that, within trade. We've built our company up over the last few years. And as the longer we've been going, the more networking we've been doing, the more people we met, the more trades that we collaborate with. To begin with, I suppose we weren't insular as such, but we kind of did a lot of service and repairs, and we were building something. And now we're at the stage where we can project manage to a degree some jobs and get the right people in. The problem with my own build, I didn't want there to be this over familiarity with people that I knew, or friends or mates that, I'll come and do this for you on a Saturday and it doesn't get done. I'll help you out with this, or don't get them to do that. That's too much. That's going to cost this amount. You can get it done for half the price. I didn't want all that discourse, that back and forth. I just wanted the project to be managed from start to finish. Now, there's a financial cost to that, and we're fortunate to be in a position that we could do that, and I didn't have to look at every element and see where I've got to save 50 quid or 100 quid here. And, some people out there, they've got to do that, and, that's just the way life is. But we were very fortunate that we could do it that way. So, we've become friends, since meeting and you doing the project, and we talk frequently, but it didn't start that way. It was as easy as you were to communicate with, and we got on straight away, and there was some good synergy there. You treated me, there was a professionalism. This is how we operate as a business, and you treated me as you would any other customer. I felt,
Yeah. Well, certainly that. What was. So going back to the build, then there must have been times, because I've gone through it myself, going through an extension, and there are times, you've got to go through a process, haven't you? And there is some upheaval. So for you, what was the most challenging moment, do you think? What was the time that was hardest in the build, and how did you navigate it? How did you or the company help you get over that, do you think?
Well, I actually think, as mad as it was for a heating engineer to kind of have this work done on his house, in the busiest time for us as a business, because I was so busy with the business, there's many times when the builders would leave and I wouldn't see them. They had a key, and, some of the lads, I had a great relationship, still do. But I'd get back at 8 o'clock at night and there was just a load more had been done. So which actually helped me in some respects. I wasn't there a great deal. I think the biggest challenge was losing the kitchen, which was necessary because we had a new kitchen and a new layout. We got rid of the gas hob, even though I'm a gas man. We went to an induction hob, so the kitchen was out of bounds.
So how did you navigate that? So, because a lot of people put like air fryers in another room. So what did you do there?
I had a kettle and a microwave upstairs. I was getting care packages from my mum and dad, where my wife was living at the time, where we were having the extension with the kids. I mean, Ace, my son, was born in the September, and the project started in the October. So we had that as long as going into the busiest period for us as heating engineers, and the colder days, darker nights, and all of that. But yeah, I got a good family around me, and we knew that it was a temporary situation. We knew we could manage. I didn't necessarily want Stacey, my wife, and the kids to be at home, which I think she was a bit like, well, why? If you can't. But I knew there was going to be upheaval and walls down. I knew it wasn't going to be much fun for her with the baby as well. And the team were very neat and tidy and looked after the property. Floor protection, sheets up. There was no mess in any other area of the property, but there's always that element of risk and banging and noise and people coming and going. So I just knew it would be better for her to not be there. But whatever happened when I was there, I was happy to accept. But yeah, I think losing the kitchen was challenging. I probably had a few too many Just Eat orders come into the house after 8 o'clock at night.
A lot of people report that, actually. They report that, because you've lost the kitchen for, a period of time. They get sick of takeaways now. Before that, it's like a treat. Yeah. It's a treat to cook your own food in your own kitchen.
That was a really nice moment when the kitchen was back in, and it wasn't totally finished, there was finishing touches and stuff to do, but when it started becoming functional again, and my wife and kids were back in there and we were using the space, it was instantly worth it, because there was a question or there was a thought of, I hope this is going to be worth it. I hope this kind of, I wanted to, and they were only at my parents' house, 20 minutes away. But I was mindful as well. I didn't want to miss out on time with the kids and a newborn. So we were kind of managing that. But it was, any doubts we had of whether it was going to be worth it, that was instantly alleviated once we could fire up the induction hob for the first time, and we had the new American fridge freezer in, and my daughter was sitting at the breakfast bar, eating the cereal before school. It instantly became the space that we hoped it would be, and it slotted in. Our life now is in that space. We've got the other areas of the house, obviously, but the lounge, the kitchen, the dining area, and this time in the summer months and the brighter months, we like to get the doors open and use the garden as well. And it's really transformed the way we live, which sounds really dramatic, but we're all together. We're all in one spot. It's the hub of the family home for us. So yeah, any doubts we had, is this going to be worth it? We're answered very quickly.
So like childbirth, the temporary pain is worth the end result.
Yeah.
I mean,
absolutely.
That's a nice, pleasurable thing for us to experience as well, because we do get to know people, we do get to know the families. So when we saw your son born, literally like, I've got a few private stories I won't share about that, but come around a few weeks after the birth, and then delaying the project and saying we'll start a bit later, to get used to it, and being flexible with that. Again, with communication, because again, I've been through it, so we know how difficult that experience can be, especially when you work in hours. But I did feel sorry for you, actually, because you work long hours anyway, especially in the winter, and you was coming home, and we did take off the plumbing elements and allowed you to do it, which I'm not sure if that was a good thing or not, given the hours you were working at that time. But
but
we're certainly going to be flexible with that. And I think
you were very accommodating with it,
Yeah.
It wasn't. It was you with the team that you've got. There were people that could do every element, which was great. But realistically, I'm running a plumbing and heating business, and there's parts of the job that made sense for me to do, or me and one of the lads to do. But it was just making sure that, as well as you had got everybody lined up and all the trades and the people going at the right time, that we didn't mess that up, that we didn't, once we started a job, we could get it finished. We had to move the stop tap and we had to run pipes for radiators and hot and cold. I mean, it was nothing major, and it was all in that one space. At certain times of the year, that's a lot easier to get done.
But after 12-hour days.
Yeah. But again, that wasn't compulsory, and there was that communication back and forth. There was, this is what we do. We can do this element, but by all means, if we don't want to hold the project up, and there was just the conversations. We could have that chat back and forth and find the right solution and the right fit, and just make sure that everything, just flowed really, just went to the plan.
So you've obviously had a positive experience throughout. So with that then, if you're just going to sum up your build experience and then come on to talk about your business, what kind of tips, is there any top tips you'd say if someone's considering an extension or renovation or any larger home improvement project? What would some tips be that you'd give for them starting out if they're planning on that?
Well, I think it would have been really useful. Our architect was fine, didn't have any issues with the architect. He did his part of the job. But I think you can make life easy for yourself if you're working with a builder who has got an architect, for one. Just as much kind of collaboration at the early stages. And if you can go to one person to deal with a multitude of inquiries, and obviously at Home Extension Specialists, you've got that team and you've got that wider team and you've got that network, and that's taken time to build up. But it's having the right people in the right place. So I think that would be a tip, to try and find, once you've found the builder or the company that you want to take on the project, to see who else that they can recommend within their
It's quite
network.
interesting, because in my podcast episode with an architect, I asked that question, who should come first, whether it should be the builder or the architect, and I argued for the builder first for the reasons you described. Obviously, the architect pushed it to the architect first, and I think it depends. I think if you're lucky enough to find a builder who's got that relationship, then yeah. But it's interesting. You think you'd go and find or try and find a builder first?
Yeah, I think so. And as you say, there are different projects and different scales of jobs and special areas of specialty, if you like. But I certainly think having an architect and a builder that can work together.
So try and secure a builder early on who is interested in the project, who gives the professionalism, does the follow-ups, and seems
says what they're going to do.
Project.
If you can make an appointment and they meet that appointment and they do everything, because I'm aware of what we do. Sometimes we can give quotes or estimates, and it's outside of someone's budget, and they might not ultimately not go with us for the job, but we know that we've done absolutely everything we can there to give them a positive experience, and we've outlined a number of factors. If there's any early red flags in any early conversation with anyone that you're going to have work with, there's usually a reason for it. If you're getting a bad feel for somebody, or there's seems to be a desire to cut corners. Again, you're looking, when you're having your house extended, your home extended, it's your most important. You can't afford to cut corners, and it might look better on paper. You might think you're saving money, but a lot of the times you end up having to pay to get parts redone again. I'm sure you've seen countless building projects, and we've saw countless heating projects, that the cost has spiraled, not so much from the initial plan. It's all the work that's had to be done to put things right afterwards. And when you're having foundations put in and brickwork and plaster and roofs put on, it's not the type of stuff that you want to be done twice. So I would be very mindful. And I don't know what your recommendation is on people getting quotes and a number of quotes, but if you've got a number of quotes and one is massively cheaper than the others, that for me wouldn't be like, oh great, let's go for that one. It would be like, what aren't they doing? From personal experience as well, and I haven't got stung many times over the years, and I'm fortunate to know some really good tradesmen, and fortunate enough to be able to do elements myself as well. But you see it a lot. You see people that are thinking they're getting a deal, but actually they're getting ripped off.
It's quite interesting, that, isn't it? Because I know you've recommended me to a project recently. Again, I won't mention any names, but I mean, they've gone through a terrible time, haven't they? Yeah. So explain to me what that was. So that was an extension project, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And then just explain, without the details, kind of like what happened and what happened to that client and how did you get involved?
Well, to be honest, we replaced the boiler for the customer going back 2 years. And she had spoke at the time about her want or desire to extend her property, and she'd be having underfloor heating. We did loosely talk about the project and say, nearer the time, we can do elements of it. But I think what sold her on letting the builders do it was kind of, we spoke about, you want somebody to manage everything, but they were trying to manage elements of the job, which they shouldn't have been. To be quite honest, you could see that from the standard of the work. There's elements of the build that look quite nice, but when you start looking a little bit deeper, you find more and more problems. For us, they'd moved the boiler that we installed, and they'd moved it, and it was dangerous. They'd broken the flue. They'd left the flue terminal right next to an extractor fan that was way too close. The extractor fan wasn't connected. So every time the boiler was on and it was pluming fumes, they were potentially going back into the building. There was a number of kind of minor things which, you could nitpick up, but there was some dangerous elements to that. The flue that they'd used was broken, and there was part of the flue that was in the wall that you wouldn't necessarily see without removing it. That wasn't even for a Worcester Bosch boiler, which they got. They'd used a piece of flue from another manufacturer and kind of bodged the flue back together because they broke it and refitted it. And no one would have ever known, to be honest, if it wasn't for all the other issues. So again, you feel absolutely terrible as when you're trying to help people, to have to point these things out at times and ultimately provide a quote to put the things right. But yeah, I think that kind of sums it up, that she kind of got, the customer unfortunately thought she was getting a service that did everything. But yeah, there was people as part of that team, not all of them, there's some decent stuff there. The building itself, without going, looking too deeply, there's elements that you think, this will be a really nice space and I like this. But yeah, you probably noticed more from a build point of view of things that just weren't right.
Well, I went round on your recommendation, and there were a lot wrong. Let's put it that way. Yeah. So you had to condemn the installation, turn the gas off at that point.
We did, yeah.
I think they got an electrician round before I got there as well, who did the same with the electrics.
Yeah.
So you're right in that you got to get, if someone's project managing the whole thing, you got to make sure they've delivered that on numerous occasions before, and getting in the right trades, because you do see people, self-builders or multi-traders, having a go at everything.
Yeah.
And they'll have a go at the heating. I mean, bodging a flue together is just absolutely crazy, isn't it? I mean... Yeah,
I think there is elements to the job, and there's a lot of good multi-skilled engineers out there that can turn their hand to anything. I mean, you've got a few in your team, and we have in our team as well. But if there's an area of specialty, or it's got to be the right person with the right qualification and the right experience. If you haven't got that person in your team, you've got to find that person and get them in, or you've got to keep that communication very clear with customers. I believe anyway, if there's an element of the job that is outside of the scope of what you provide, then to do it unsafely is kind of unforgivable. And then it begs questions then about the whole job, and the stage where the build was at, the foundations were in, the brickwork was done, there's plaster on the walls. And unfortunately, a lot of that, to get it right and to get it safe and to get it passed by a buildings inspector, it's going to have to be redone. And the costs then, I imagine, going to spiral. It's you do feel for them.
Yeah, you do. It is heartbreaking to be at that stage, isn't it? And to have to help people at that stage. So really, we want to try and help people not get there in the first place, and that's why I ask for the tips off the guests, and then just see. So in terms of your own company, then, so tell us about WLV Heating and Plumbing. And how did the company come together? And then I know there's a few of you in the business, so if you can introduce each one and just say what part of the business.
Yeah, okay.
So WLV Heating and Plumbing.
Yeah.
Is that the official title?
WLV Plumbing and Heating.
Plumbing and Heating.
We were WLV Heating for a long time, WLV Heating Limited. Yeah. Because to begin with, we were very much, for all the things and the way the business has progressed and the things we're involved in now, we were gasmen, we were heating engineers. When people called us plumbers. No, we're not plumbers, we're heating engineers. And we'd have a bit of a laugh and a joke with people. Yeah. But again, people's perception of what a plumber is and what a heating engineer is, some people think that's exactly the same thing, and quite rightly so. Some will offer every element, but myself and my two business partners, Scott and Adam, we were at British Gas, and we were there for a long time.
So all three of you directors of the company?
Yes.
All three of you at British Gas?
Yes.
All three of you gas men?
Yes.
Okay.
That's right. So when we left British, and there's a bit of an origin story as to why I wanted to set up my own business and, how I discovered my entrepreneurial itch. Yeah. But when we did leave and had individual heating companies, we kind of thought, we know what we're good at, we know what we're experienced at, and that's what we are, we're gas men. So if somebody rings up and said, I want an outside tap fitted, or I want a kitchen tap shower, can you swap a shower? And so, well, we probably can, but that's not really what we do. Like, we want to stick with boilers and we'll stick with heating, but there's a lot of crossover skills there and a lot of stuff that we weren't necessarily doing on a day-to-day basis, but stuff that, we were competent to do. So when we would actually turn work away at times, if you think about it, like if people were asking us if we're plumbers and we say no, they might be thinking, well, I wanted my boiler changing next year, so,
Well, they might be getting the terminology mixed up and think they need a plumber to sort out the boiler.
Exactly. So we were turning opportunities away. Now, it's never a particular, I don't think, oh, great, somebody's got in touch because the toilet's not working, we've got to fix the toilet. We do it, and we do much more of that now than we used to. But yeah, it's kind of the work that we did want. We were potentially turning away just by being a little bit militant and we're heating engineers, we're gasmen, this is what we do. So over time, we've embraced it. And people call me whatever they want now. They can call me a plumber, they can call me a heating engineer. We try to offer solutions, and over the past year or so, we've grown our team significantly. We've got 6 heating engineers, 2 plumbers, and an electrician that we use frequently as well. But in the early days, it was me, Scott and Adam. And as time has gone on and as the company's grown and we've got these reviews like we spoke about earlier, and we really found the love for what we do. We'd done this job we thought of it as a job at British Gas, but and not one at times that we particularly enjoyed, I would say.
Probably thought it was a career, not a job. You thought you had a career at British Gas, or did you find out that wasn't the case? There's no career or no progression there? There
was certainly hurdles and obstacles, and when you want to do things a certain way and you're in a big company, you sometimes haven't got that stroke or that say, so you have to just accept how things are at times, and that's really difficult. When you're trying to change things for reasons that you believe in, and you're trying to offer a service and do things the way you feel it should be done, but there's obstacles and hurdles and people telling you no, that can be very difficult. And I think some people are better at that than others, at going back within their shell a little bit and putting up with things. But that's not really ever been me. So at times at British Gas, I was considered perhaps a problem child, because that was one of the nicknames that I had there, because I would argue makes it sound like I'm being petty. It wasn't. I would have these discussions, and they were discussions. They weren't rows, or I weren't falling out with people, or storming out of meetings and slamming doors. It was very much so I think we can do better if we do it like this, and usually there was a reason why we can't do it like this because of this. And sometimes it was a reason I accepted, and sometimes it was a reason that I found hard to accept.
Well, one thing I know about you is that you are really customer focused and client focused, and you want the best for them and the best solution for them.
Yeah.
So it comes from the right place, that the problem child.
Yeah.
Which is great, because if a company like that should kind of embrace that really and have a change. It's hard when they're so big.
Yeah.
And they've got to have policies in place and procedures, I guess, and do things a certain way. So I can definitely see.
Well, that links in. I've kind of gone out of order, but to the origin story. So again, I was at British Gas for 15 years. About 12 years in, at British Gas, there is an expectation of the engineers to promote certain products, home improvements, or even this might be sometimes driven by the customer, saying we're looking at having a new boiler. Could we kind of get a surveyor around? Can we kind of get the ball in motion? Another example might be they want to change the controls from an old controller to a smart controller, or they want to change the radiators. There was an expectation of engineers to have those conversations, and it was a real bone of contention. Don't know so much now. I don't know if that's changed at all, but it was very much so. We're tradesmen, we're engineers, we're not salesmen, and there was a lot of resistance to that. But I didn't have that resistance because I was quite happy to discuss anything that if a customer wanted to talk about a new boiler or a hive, and I thought it was the right thing to discuss with them, then I was more than happy and comfortable to do that. So how I got my entrepreneurial itch, or what reignited it, if you like, is I started promoting Hive, which is British Gas's smart controller, on Facebook Marketplace. It was something that nobody else was doing. And as you said, British Gas have got their ways of marketing and advertising, and everything has to be signed off and go up to a chain of command and authorised, essentially. And what I was doing very much wasn't. It was, You're not going to get in trouble for this, right? Not now, no. It was a good idea because, and I stand by that, because of the amount of interest it generated, the amount of business it generated, the amount of sales. It got to a stage where I was taken off the rota, if you like, as an engineer, and I was given free rein to promote Hive, all of the additional products, the home care product, which is British Gas's service plan, the energy, so I could arrange for a customer to have an energy comparison. And there was a lot of things bolted on to somebody making an inquiry about having the thermostat replaced for a Hive. A lot of people, there was some misconception. A lot of people thought that if they had to be a British Gas customer to have a smart thermostat, a Hive. So kind of, that was massively successful, to the point my performance at British Gas, there's a set of metrics that you're measured by, and a lot of it is, how well you can do your job, but it's weighted quite significantly if you're selling a lot or promoting a lot or, getting a lot of traction by getting people through the door to give quotes for new boilers and stuff. That was quite weighted in your favour to do it that way. You could actually promote the products and sell more. Sell sounds like a bad word, but you could do your best advice piece, and it was more beneficial to your performance metrics, which carried bonuses, than actually fixing boilers. So I'm not sure if that was quite right, but that was certainly the way it was. So on paper, I looked like some kind of god of the gas world. My figures were sensational, and subsequently my managers were. And then that created a lot of friction between the managers and people pointing, and what's he doing? What are they doing? What's that team doing? Why, it's not fair type of thing. And I think there was a bit of jealousy there that nobody had done it within their own teams. Yeah. But the reason behind that whole story, that origin story, is when I was going to customers, they very much thought that I was there running, that was my business, that I was selling Hive. They didn't really, although it said it on the advert, and it's very clear that I was a British Gas engineer working on behalf of British Gas, and this is what we're doing. They kind of just thought that I got this business going, and I was going around every day just selling, fitting, talking about Hive and British Gas products. So off the success of that, and then some other things that happened afterwards at British Gas, I was like, maybe there's something here. Maybe this has given me the confidence to go on and create a company that I'm happy with, that I'm proud of, that I can look in the mirror and go, yeah, we do this the right way. or our intention is always right. We're always very honest, very clear. We try and give people options to problems, not just one solution. You need to change the boiler, or you need to do, these are your options available. We'll help in any way we can. And ultimately, it's the customer's decision. But we're happy to accommodate. Usually we can help them in whichever way they need us to.
Okay, so through that, I heard the word sales, and when you mentioned sales, you almost kind of squirmed a bit. And it's interesting as a business owner when you first look at the word sales, because I never came into business to sell to some people, and it's almost like a sleazy word, sales. But over time, you kind of get back to what it actually is, which is serving rather than sales. So it's quite interesting that you use that word, and there was a hesitation there. So in terms of that, it's like, do you feel that you can serve better now? So is that what it is? You're not selling to people, you're serving them, in the sense of how I feel that over time I'm more confident with the products, is that we're serving them and making sure we give them what they need rather than selling to them something that they don't. Yeah,
it's something where you can clearly see, it is something that I'm worried about, the perception of saying it, of saying sales. And again, there's a bit of stigma there attached to it, because I got some criticism at times from my peers because I was perceived as a salesman rather than an engineer. And I like to think that I was a good engineer, and I am a good engineer. But I would have the conversation and I would happily serve the customers with their inquiries, their problems, their issues. Generally with the Hive stuff that we spoke about, it was, I really hate this programmer. I can't use it. I don't know how to set it. I would love something simpler. And in my head, I think, well, there is something simpler and it's really good because I've got it, and I know that's the thing. Oh, I've got one of these at home. But when it's such a good product, you kind of get excited about sharing that information and going, you've got a problem, I can help you with that problem. And yeah, there is a transaction there, it is a sale, but it's not mis-selling. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of that has happened. I think there's kind of unscrupulous companies out there that perhaps people have had negative experience, going back to stuff like rogue traders and, all of this is in sometimes people's mind. So when they've got a tradesman into the house, if it looks like they're trying to move a conversation a particular way, then they can be quite suspicious of that. I've got no problem with selling and serving my customer base, and it's absolutely essential, and there's a necessity of trying to grow a business. If we're not promoting and selling our services and booking in work, we're not going to do particularly well as a business, and we're not going to be able to serve our customers moving forward if we haven't got a stream of work. And it's never ending, and it's as you're growing a company and you're trying to add more engineers and more team and more infrastructure and more backroom staff, if you like, there's got to be a good flow of work and momentum. But I never see as I've kind of a bit of a tangent, but sometimes some of our best social media posts, they aren't the ones about, book a boiler service now. It's very kind of route one. And, I might be thinking to myself, we'd love to encourage more customers to book a service. But actually, by going that, by putting that kind of post out there, it doesn't do particularly well in terms of engagement. So it's just about being a little bit more confident in what we do, making people aware of what we do. But if people have a need that is, if people need us to quote them for a job, not to feel bad about that, we're helping them essentially, and we should. I think sales has got a bad rep for the door-to-door sales people who go around selling people things that they sometimes don't need. I had one the other day come try and sell me new plastics, faces off it. Yes.
I don't need new plastics, but they were there trying to sell me anyway. And it's because they haven't got they're not the business owners, are they? They're not the people who run the company. So it's different because we're selling what we know people want. We're not trying to hit a number and sell to anybody. No. Our services aren't open to anybody. Yeah. It's got to be the right person, the right time. I get this with other trades, like they'll knock on and say, do you want to replace your roof? Well, similar with the boiler, people don't tend to want to do that until there's a problem.
Yeah.
And when there's a problem, that's when you get the call. My boiler's gone off. At that point, they need a new boiler. My roof's leaking. I need a new roof.
Yeah.
So we tend to get people reach out to us.
Yeah.
Not the other way around. Although we run, we've got social media presence and so forth. That is just about widening your exposure, isn't it?
Yes.
It's not trying to get 1,000 sales through the door.
No.
Because as small business owners, you don't necessarily want that either.
No, it's just, you're right in saying that, it's that awareness of just making people aware of what you do and, attracting people organically, like rather than forcing it. And as you say, like, all companies operate differently, and there must be, those type of companies that are knocking doors, they must get an element of success because they've been doing it for so long. But in what we do and the way we do it, that's not our intention. It is, to basically be there for people when they have an issue and we can offer a solution. And we can't look at it as, a sale as such. It's a solution.
Yeah. So how would you build that trust then? So it's one thing I've looked at for a while and looked at the service we offer.
Yeah.
In that, how do they know? So with the rogues that are out there, it's like, how can you differentiate yourself and how can you can build that trust so that client is happy with you. So obviously you've been through the service, and I think it's kind of, just being genuine and open and just trying to help, and hopefully people can gauge that. But is there anything else that you do? I know you've got a load of Google reviews, so obviously if they look online they can see that, but is there anything else you do with the clients? I like to ask questions.
Yeah.
To see, why, not just they want a box put on the back of the house, we can build you a box on the back of the house. But, I like to ask, why do you want that, and really gauge the need in order to help serve rather than sell. And I know on your project we kind of changed a few things that I thought would, or highlighted to you that a few things could be done in a different way. So how do you do that with your clients? How do you build that trust?
Again, it's trying to recognise their needs and their concerns and the things that matter to them the most, and to try and always give value, I suppose, like for them to. I can get too granular at times going into like individual faults or issues, and I've tried to streamline things and take out some of the fluff at times. When I'm building quotes, I like them to be detailed, but I don't like it to just be words for the sake of words, and it's very much the same in our conversations. We just try to promote everything we do and the way that we do it. So our boiler servicing, for example, we worked the same kind of standards as the manufacturers are, which isn't kind of across the industry. You would perhaps expect that would be just the way it's done. That's the way things are. A boiler service is a boiler service, that every gas engineer would service a boiler in the same manner, or a heat pump, or an unvented hot water cylinder. And there's not, and we're always willing to learn. We invest a lot of time in training and going to visit manufacturers and product awareness. And always, if we pick up a tip or something to do extra on a particular boiler, we love that, and then we'll tell our customer that, not to show off. And sometimes they're really interested, that's great. And sometimes they'll nod and they don't really care. But like we try and show them that we're doing the absolute best job that we possibly can while we're in their homes working on their property, on their appliance. So I think that is how we build the trust, how we do. It's kind of something that we don't really think about too much because we've been this way for such a long time. And, we had some excellent experience, and at British Gas, our training, they set us up for life, really. And we probably didn't appreciate that particularly in the early days as much as we do now. We say to ourselves at times, or people say to us individually, we don't realise how good we are, or how people don't always have those fantastic experiences. The experiences that we try to offer and say, this is how we work, that's not across the board. So yeah, it's just like, communication, honesty, and presenting to them the value of a WLV plumbing and heating job, I suppose.
Yeah. So you've just touched on a bit there. So in terms of trends then, where heating's going. So obviously the government are pushing heat pumps, even in the wrong circumstances now where the home's uninsulated. I don't know how that's quite going to work. But in terms of a lot of clients I'm getting are thinking more about energy efficiency, especially with the cost of, utility bills going up, the cost of gas, electric and this kind of thing. So what kind of products are you seeing more of? Are you seeing more of the heat pumps coming through? And what is there any other products coming out to market that you've seen or that you offer?
Well, I think in terms of getting the country to net zero and the intention of doing that long term, I think it's an admirable thing, and there's some real good reasons as to why we should want to do that. But it's not going to happen overnight. And products like heat pumps, as good as they are, they're not a solution for everyone. So there's a number of things that boilers for a long time have been able to operate on a 20% hydrogen blend. So I'm not sure as to what the latest is on the investment in hydrogen and using that as an energy source. Solar, obviously, is something that more and more prominent now. There's a number of things: ground source, heat source, air source. Sorry. In terms of we like to think of ourselves at times as traditional gas men, but we have shown and we continue to try to innovate how we do things, innovate our customers' experience. We've got things in place now that you'd associate with a big company, booking reminders and en route messages and follow-up messages. We've kind of embraced automation. Yeah. So to say that we're just traditional old school gas men that don't want to change wouldn't be right. But we kind of look into this new technology, as you say, and if it's going to solve an issue, if it's a good solution for our customers, then absolutely we want to be on board with that. We've actually got our air source heat pump training booked in about 6 weeks' time. So we are going to be getting more of an insight and increasing our knowledge of the product. And in time, as we, I suppose, add to that knowledge and add to our team, we'll be able to promote those services a little bit more. So that might be a better indication of how much traction it's gaining at the minute. We haven't had a mass of inquiries. And like you say, some properties aren't going to be suitable, or there's going to be so much that's required to get the properties up to the standard where a heat pump will be a viable solution, that perhaps for the foreseeable it will be a gas boiler still. Gas boilers are very efficient, they're very good. They're a hell of a lot better than coal, and the way some countries in the world are heating their homes and buildings. With the cost of energy at the minute, if electricity is around 3 times the price of gas, you could be spending a lot on an outlay to heat a home the same as you're doing it now and not really see much saving because of the rising energy costs. So, but for other people, it would be an absolutely, a much more economic way of heating the building. It can be implemented at new builds. It can be designed so that it works really, really well, and it's the right solution for people. So we're not on the fence. We're not saying that heat pumps aren't good. They are, but there are a lot of requirements and a lot of things that have to be calculated and make sure they're done. If you just fit in a heat pump onto an existing system that's not suitable for it, it's not going to heat a home effectively in a way that a customer is perhaps used to. So then it could get, this heat pump's no good. Heat pumps are really good, but unfortunately, if they're not installed well, they could give that impression that, and we've known of people that have had heat pumps and tried to look at this technology and they've ended up taking them out. Yeah. We don't want to be in that position. It should be done right from the get-go. But sometimes that's a much bigger job than people anticipate and a more costly job than people anticipate, even with the grants that are available.
Yeah, it seems like we've got some shared values there, really, which is one, the customer experience and how we serve them, and then the other one's the education.
Yeah.
And this is why we do things like this where we can share ideas and going on looking at those renewables or the air source stuff. It's the only way to do it, isn't it? Is up your knowledge and then be able to offer that as you go and bring that into the blend. Where a lot of projects we do, and we have installed heat pumps, and in the right project, like you said, the product is a good one.
Yeah.
But you've got to serve the client and make sure they know that in some instances it may not function.
Yeah.
Like you said, exactly the way that they used to, where the instant heats, there's got to be a bit of a delay there. Yeah, so that's interesting. Okay, so the title of the podcast is called Building to Last. Now, I know what that means to me and my business. What does building to last mean to you, for you and your clients and your own business and relationships?
Yeah. Well, it kind of goes hand in hand with our ethos of building relationships with people. You might only need a boiler service or recommend a boiler service every year, but we want to be that company that is returning to those customers that we've built up with those relationships year on year. We're not a company that looks at a potential customer as an opportunity to make a load of money and move on to the next job and forget about them. We blur the lines a little bit, I suppose, between a professional and skilled tradesman that are good at what they do and are very qualified in what they do, and we have to re-qualify every few years. Every 5 years we re-qualify. So we are good and we are professional, but we like to think anyway that we're nice guys, and we build up that trust and we build up that relationship, not only many times with that customer, but their friends and their family. And we're talking grandparents, and we're talking extended families, sometimes vulnerable people. We like customers to know that if they've got a problem in the heating, in the hot water world, in the plumbing space, that we are the people that will help them with those issues. So we're not there, but one job and never go back. There are obviously times where you do a repair, and that might be so that's the end of that relationship. But we can, wherever possible, we're building a company that we want to see those people every year, which sounds a bit, I don't know, corny, I suppose, in some respects, but we do kind of build friendships with people, and we know bits about their families and they know stuff about us, and it's very nice and very pleasant, and we enjoy going to work every day, and we don't dread going to anybody because of the way that we've worked and the people that we work with and the customers that we've built up. We enjoy the job more than we ever thought possible.
Yeah, that's great. So going back to if you're just going to advise a homeowner just starting out, or looking for a heating engineer, what would you advise? So there'll be people across the country, for instance, who areas we don't serve. So in terms of looking for a heating engineer, how do they find that? Or how do they know that? So we've talked about Google reviews. Yeah. How else do you think, one tip on what they can do? So in terms of the directories.
Yeah.
I'll just navigate that first. Directories, Check a Trade, these kind of places. What has your experience been with those and getting clients from there? Do you recommend that a route for homeowners to look, or is there a better route? Is it the Google local business with the good reviews a better way, do you think?
Yeah, I think reviews and comprehensive reviews, a lot of reviews, can only be a good thing, because you can't fake it that many times. Yeah, you can't. You haven't got 100, 200, 300, 500 reviews. You're not getting some bloke down the pub to do it. These are real people, real experiences, and people can read all about those. So I think that's really powerful. I think Check a Trade and Trust a Trader and some of the others, they're pretty good, to be honest, at making sure that a company is who they say they are and have got the accreditations and the skills that they're advertising. So we registered with Trust a Trader and Check a Trade. We do bits and pieces for a few others as well. We've had nothing but good experiences from them. I think which trusted trader is another thing that people can look out for as well. But yeah, accreditations, local businesses that care, that want to do things the right way, that aren't, I'm not saying that all big businesses, because it comes down to an individual choice at times. You know, who the engineer is, it doesn't matter if he's works for himself or works for a company. If he's got enough about him, he'll do the job the way he knows it should be done, he or she. But yeah, customers can help themselves by making sure that, you know, they're reputable, they've got good reviews, they've got accreditations, and you don't expect customers to know too much about the ins and outs of what happens on a boiler service, but if a company's in and they're in and out in 10, 15 minutes and it's clear that, you know, they're not kind of invested in the job, those are the companies that I would avoid as a customer.
So make sure they take the time to understand the needs. On that initial survey consultation, you know, they should be asking the right questions, you know, and really assessing the families or the client's needs.
Yeah.
And just take that, you know, really think about who they're inviting in maybe.
Yeah.
And well as look at, because I think there is sometimes, I've heard, when you hear the negative stories, some of them have used those directories.
Yeah.
The online directory services, and they've not done extensive research after that, or not even extensive. They've not checked that. So you can get contacted by any company, and then they've not checked that company because it's come through a directory. It's like automatically it's been checked. But I know from our experience, the only thing they ask us is for insurance.
Yes.
Which we've got comprehensive insurance, but you can get cheap insurance.
Yes.
So that's the only check they have for builders. Now, for heat engineers, they would have obviously the gas safe checks.
Yes.
And so forth, I'd imagine. So I'd say maybe not rely. If you
don't
use
take
those
for
services,
granted.
don't take it for granted.
Exactly. Don't take it for granted that a company appearing on a directory is the right choice. It's a number of factors, a number of things, and it's an important choice, whether it's servicing a boiler or installing a heat pump or replacing all of the radiators, or you know, it's important, and it's worth an extra few clicks and another 10 or 15 minutes of your time reading some reviews, checking the website out. You know, we're having some work done on our website to make it a little bit more engaging and to tell people a little bit about us as people, you know, and who we are and what we're about, you know, because you know, we want to make it interesting, but that kind of reflects how we are with our customers as well. Yeah. So we want people to kind of pick up on that straight away, however they find us. That we want them to, you know, feel that we could be a good fit for them, and not because so we can just get the business. It's because that people like that, they're a good fit for our business as much as we're a good fit for their issue, you know.
Yeah. And leaving that good impression, people, it's worth its weight in gold, isn't it?
Yes.
Because, you know, the family members and so forth, and getting that retained business, which is great. So, David, before we wrap up, it's been brilliant having you on and hearing both sides of your experience as someone who's gone through a significant renovation and home improvement project, and also your experience as a professional business owner within a trade. So if anyone wants to reach out to WLV Heating, what's the best way to get in touch, or what's your preferred method of booking a consultation or a service or any of the other services you offer?
So we're in all the usual places, you know, again, feature well on Google. All of our details are on there. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram. Our website is wlvheating.co.uk. We are considering branching out into a bit more Instagram and TikTok world, because it seems really popular and customers have got a genuine interest, I think, at times in elements of the job that we might not consider something that people would be interested in.
Like taking a boiler case off and looking at the components inside. There's a lot of people interested in that kind of stuff. So,
there's stuff that we take for granted on a daily basis that is kind of normal for us. But yeah, there is a thought that we could be doing something a little bit more creative with content, so maybe that's something we move into. But for the time being, website, Google, Facebook, ultimately WhatsApp inquiries. We've got a landline number that is as well as the mobile numbers. So there's a number of modes of communication, but that's all detailed on the website and on the Google page.
Okay, so if it's wlvheating.co.uk.
That's right, yeah.
Okay, and all your details are on there. That's great. So I'll drop some links in the notes and stuff if I can. So David, thanks for being so open and honest and sharing what it takes to build something, businesses, relationships, or everything that lasts. So this has been Building to Last, the podcast about doing things properly for the long term. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.